So Mara is an award-winning performance storyteller and narrative artist, drawing on her rich dual Kenyan-Scottish cultural heritage. And she creates worlds that explore contemporary issues through legend, myth, and fantasy. She fuses ancient and modern in an intoxicating experience where the audience takes center stage, leading to invitation to perform around the world. Right, so thank you, Mara, and welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's lovely to see you again.
Yes, you too.
And you're not
really
outside, are you? You're not outside, are you?
I am outside, actually. I decided to come back to Kenya for a few months. So I am outside in the sunshine. Sorry.
Good.
Yeah, so I'm here in the middle of an indigenous Kenyan forest, actually. So it's a really, really lovely place, and actually a really nice place to be able to tell this story.
That's brilliant. Thank you. That's really made it really come to life, the storytelling.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it, and it's been really interesting to hear some of the conversations that have already taken place and see how that could interweave into a story for everybody here to hopefully enjoy and hopefully kind of raise some questions and some thoughts and sort of bring everything together in a sense. So yeah.
Right. Okay. So I haven't really prepped anybody on what they need to do, so I'm going to pass that over to you, and then you can tell us how this session is going to pan out. Is that all right?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think, you know, in an ideal world, we would have all been together live, and I could have drawn on you and brought you up onto the stage. But this is a virtual session, and it's all quite we're all muted, and sometimes I can't see you. But at the same time, I still hope that you're able to imagine everything. And then certainly for the Q&A, if you could just pose as many questions as you like, or just sort of think if there is anything that does come up in the story that you might want to, you know, draw on further, then please do so. But yes, if I ask you to imagine stuff, please do imagine stuff. Yeah, so I'll tell a story for about 15, 20 minutes, and then we shall have a Q&A afterwards.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Are you ready for me to just begin?
Yes, on you go.
Yeah. Okay, so because I am in Kenya, I'm going to start with the way that we always start a story here. And the storyteller says, hadithi, hadithi. And even though you are at home and I might not be able to hear you, the response is hadithi njo, which means story come. So we'll try that. So don't be embarrassed if you're at home all by yourself. Say it loud and proud. Hadithi, hadithi, hadithi njo. There was once a girl, and one day she decided to go and visit her grandmother, who lived on the other side of a beautiful forest. It was a journey that the girl had taken many times before, and she was excited at the prospect of seeing her grandmother again. So she packed a little bag and off she went. The forest was beautiful. And if you could think of the most perfect forest in the world, just let your imagination carry you away. There were trees of every size and shape, branches reaching up into the sky. There were bushes, and the forest floor was crawling with insects and wonderful grasshoppers. The birds were fluttering from branch to branch. The butterflies, oh, the chirping, the sights, the sounds, the smells. It was beautiful. And there was a silver river that snaked its way through the trees. And the girl, she scooped her hands together and she drank of this crystal water. Just as she was about to leave, she caught sight of a little antelope on the other side of the stream. And their eyes made contact. And there was a respect that passed between them. And then the antelope turned and it darted away. And the girl continued on her journey. She walked on and on, but as she was approaching her grandmother's village, she noticed that the trees had begun to change and things were not quite so familiar. She felt a slight uneasiness begin to set in. She noticed that the trees were not as dense as they had been just a few weeks before. They were sparser. And as she came to the edge of the forest, she saw great stumps cut down, and there was a great stretch of dry, dusty earth that separated the forest from the village. And she could see the village in the distance. She could make out the shapes of these little houses. And she was looking forward to seeing her grandmother again. She wanted to see the little beautifully swept homesteads with the flowering bushes just outside, and so she raced across this dry earth. But as she approached, she began to notice that there was a foul odor in the air. A nasty stench filled her nostrils, and she was repulsed by it. And as she approached the village, she saw that all those lovely little houses had been caked in some filthy sludge, some greasy slime. And she saw there was a gray sludge that oozed its way through the houses. And she said to herself, what on earth has happened here? I can't believe the change in such a short space of time. And she called out, grandmother, grandmother. And from a little house right on the periphery of the village, she saw her grandmother's stick waving up and down, and she headed straight for the little home. And when she was inside, she asked her grandmother, what has happened here? And her grandmother said, sit down. I have a story to tell. And she started her story. She told her granddaughter how a few weeks previously, a small group of strangers had come to their little village, and as was the custom, they showed great hospitality. They gave them a place to stay, food to eat, water to drink, and they entertained them with stories deep into the night. But after 2 days, the strangers showed no sign of leaving. And on the third day, the villagers began to ask where they intended to go next. But the strangers simply replied that they were just looking around. The fourth day came and went, and the fifth, and soon the villagers realized that perhaps these strangers had intentions that they did not know about. And on the sixth and the seventh day, those intentions became clear. The strangers had no intention of leaving that village. Instead, they unveiled a weapon more powerful than the spears and the wooden clubs that the villagers used. And against these weapons, the villagers had no choice but to do what the strangers said. The strangers looked around, and as they listened to those beautiful stories of the thin streams of gold and silver that existed in the hills beyond the village, their eyes had grown wide. When they saw the thick, black, fertile soil, oh, their eyes gleamed. When they looked around at the thick forest and the beautiful trees around them, their hearts started to race. And so they found the most beautiful homesteads, and they forced the people off their land. And the grandmother recounted how the pain of losing that land had forced tears to flow down their cheeks. And as it landed on the ground, it turned into coagulated sludge that oozed through that village. The grandmother continued her story and told how the strangers had taken over everything, and they had offered jobs to the people of the village. But these were no ordinary jobs. These were not jobs at all. They were soul-sucking creations that paid a pittance. And so people were forced to take on second, third, fourth jobs just to survive. And for those who had elderly parents or perhaps a sickly child, there was no choice but to end up in serious debt. And so life continued. But desperation of these people, the sweat of their labor dripped to the ground. And as it turned into a thick sewage, it began to flow through the village and began to cake the walls of the houses. But not only that, because the strangers had managed to dismantle laws and rules and systems of government that had existed for hundreds of years and replaced it overnight with a new system of law. And this new system had many hoops to jump through for the smallest thing. And each hoop required effort, required time, and the exhaustion, the sighs of the poor villagers floated up into the air, turned into little droplets that cast a shadow over the entire village. And the strangers had friends in distant lands, and when they heard of the thin streams of gold and silver in the hills behind the village, well, they soon arrived. And as they began to dig, and excavate everything from those hills, the dust rose up into the air and coated the village with a thin dust. And as they inhaled this dust, they coughed out phlegm that also floated into this river of filth that inhabited the entire village. But the girl, as she listened to her grandmother's story, she was horrified and she was shocked at what she heard. But she remembered the stories that her grandmother had always told her. She had walked through this paradise of a forest, and she asked her grandmother, how come the villagers are not taking care of the forest? The forest will help them. The forest has always given us food. The forest has always healed us. The forest has always sustained us in every single way. And yet, look, the trees have been chopped down. And her grandmother leaned back and said, look around you. Who has time to think about the trees when they are struggling to survive? Who has the inclination to try and take care of their surroundings when they are not involved in any kind of conversation? You, child, need to speak to the strangers. And so that is what the girl set out to do. She went to the strangers' homes. A great fortress surrounded these beautiful structures, and she banged on the door, but they would not allow her in. She called out, asking her questions, and they told her to go away. She tried to find a way. She saw a little window and she scrambled up the wall, but the soldiers knocked her away and told her never to return. But the girl was filled with a rage. She needed to know more. And so she concentrated her rage and she squeezed and squeezed herself, and she turned into a tiny little fly, and she flew through that window and she settled on the wall, and her multiple eyes looked around. And if you can imagine the beauty and the splendor, the comfort of this immense hall in which she found herself, you can imagine perfection. She saw the magnificent chairs. She saw the thick curtains. She saw every single luxury that she had never had imagined possible. But importantly, she listened to the conversations. Oh, how the strangers ate their fill, and as they ate, they rubbed their stomachs, they rubbed their hands, and they talked and talked, endless talking. And these conversations revolved around, look at these villagers, see how they live. How can they not take better care of themselves? We have to change the language. We have to give them something to aspire to. Let us introduce words like progress. Let us talk about development. Let us talk about building the economy. And when these ideas take hold, then perhaps they might be able to lift themselves to a better standard of living. Let us get rid of the things that they hold dear. Let us turn them into things that are primitive, things that are old-fashioned, things that are of little concern to this new world that we wish to build. Let us disintegrate the old value system. Let us work towards something bigger and something that is beneficial for us all. And as the girl listened, these conversations grew wilder and wilder in their scope. They spoke about denouncing the education system. They spoke about making the people forget their stories. Let them cease to imagine an alternative future. Let us give them the vision to which they should aspire to. And so the girl watched as messengers were sent out into the village. But she noticed that the villagers listened, and they listened so hard, and they began to imagine all these wonderful things that existed beyond that wall. And they too wanted to be a part of that conversation. They wanted to be a part of that world. And so they listened to the new stories, and they slowly began to forget the old. And the girl was horrified. She raced back to her grandmother, and she said, "Grandmother, people are forgetting what we have always known. And grandmother, not only that, when they leave this village, I have seen that they carry these new stories with them." And the grandmother said, "Yes, but I am still here, and I know the stories. You are still here, and you know the stories. And there are many others who do not wish to give the old stories away. So let us sit together and let us change the language." And so they did. They sat, and the conversation that came out of that meeting, well, that is a whole other story. And perhaps we'll hear that story at the next event that we have as part of as part of these workshops.